And welcome to another 5-minute video from Paper Classroom. Today we're going to talk about felt systems. So this is different things that we do with felt other than the traditional ways of using felts. So there are two different things we can do. There's one system called silent drive, and with silent drive this is where we use the felt to drive the drying cylinder rather than the drying cylinder to drive the felt. And the other thing is called the slalom system. In the slalom system, rather than having two felts, one on the top drying cylinders and one on the bottom drying cylinders, we actually only have one felt, and that travels between top and bottom drying cylinders. Okay, so let's start off with silent drive. As you can see here with silent drive, you've got these motors that drive the rolls that drive the felts. So electric motors on here drive the felt rolls, they drive the felts, and the felts turn the drying cylinders. So there are quite a lot of advantages of silent drive. One big advantage is you get rid of all the gears and all the gear work. So if you get rid of all the gears, then you have a lot less noise, you don't have all the gears enmeshing with each other. You've a lot less lubrication, because you don't have all the gears there that need to be lubricated. And you need lower horsepower motors to drive everything. The other big advantage is there's less framing, less framework around. If you don't need a lot of gearboxes there, you don't need all the framing to hold all the gearboxes, and therefore you've got much easier access to usually to the back side of the system for if you need to remove broke or other things. And because you've got a lot of framing, then you've got much better ventilation. Airflow is far easier. And then we've got the slalom system. As you can see with the slalom system, we have one dry fabric that goes around all the drying cylinders. So if you can imagine that paper comes in here, then at this point the paper is trapped between the dry fabric and the drying cylinder. At this point here, the paper then runs on the outside of the bottom dry fabric, and then there we're back trapped between the dry fabric and the cylinder. So the idea of this was to try and support the sheet and take it through the whole system and avoid things like the edge flapping idea. So this ultimately led to single tier drying systems. They were drying it like this, then they realised that these bottom drying cylinders weren't doing very much drying because the sheet was on the outside. So they then replaced them with smaller rolls, and they put a vacuum on to hold the sheet firmly onto the dry fabric. So a summary of what we've talked about with felt systems today. You've got the silent drive. Many advantages for silent drive, such as all based around lack of gearboxes and lack of framing. There are very few disadvantages. One disadvantage is trying to match the speeds of the different sections. If you're not got a line shaft doing everything, if you've got electrically driven sections, then it's a bit more difficult to match the speeds. And also it depends on the angle of felt wrap. If you've only got a very shallow felt wrap, then they can't get a really good grip on the cylinder, and you might have some problems trying to turn that cylinder. But those are the only two really disadvantages. There are a lot more advantages than disadvantages. This is a system that became very popular and then died out in a lot of places. Still used a lot in Eastern Europe, but I think places like Germany have tried it and abandoned it. And then we've got slalom felt systems. With slalom felt systems, it's aimed at sheet stability. What we're trying to do is to reduce sheet flutter. And the disadvantage, it only dries one side of the paper at a time. And finally, it was the precursor to single tier drying. Okay, well, thank you for listening to this video, and please feel free to follow us on any of this social media.